Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and we have something super nice looking to take a look at today as we are checking out another Recur figure of that most recent quite large box of Recur figures that I had unboxed a little ways back on the channel. This is their Liopleurodon, and it is potentially the nicest looking Recur figure I think I've ever seen. Like, it is insanely appealing to the eye, if you ask me, especially if you are a fan of the Walking with Dinosaurs series, and although the tones of color used on this don't exactly match up to the Liopleurodon from that series, I feel like the sculpt and the paint scheme, just not the tones of color, but the actual paint scheme, it's all very similar to that Liopleurodon, so I instantly was drawn to this figure because of that, and I must say that I am just blown away by how beautiful this figure truly is in person. Like, it's really, really nice looking, and definitely one of my favorite purchases from the Recur line. It is just a gorgeous looking interpretation of that kind of Walking with Dinosaurs style Liopleurodon. It's just really beautiful looking, and the sculpt is really cool as well, as they have kind of like a nice curve in the body showing off some movement to the Liopleurodon as it's swimming along. So some life included in something that often is kind of displayed in almost a lifeless, kind of a stagnant position, because there's only so much you can really do when it comes to marine reptiles in a sculpt minus a base. Like, if you have a base and a rod, you could do a little bit more of a dynamic appearance to the sculpt and positioning of the body, but when it comes to just a standalone figure like this, there's usually only so much you can do, and I think Recur has done a great job of actually coming up with kind of like some life and adding it to the sculpt as far as the positioning of this figure goes, and still allowing it to actually balance quite nicely when it's sitting here displayed. Like, it sits here really well and doesn't like fall over or anything. This back flipper here nicely holds it up, so really cool looking here again at first glance. So let's go ahead and get a closer look right now. Also, another really cool little tidbit of info on the Recur figures are these really neat little booklets that they have attached to them. And you can see that as you go through this, let me take it off of the tail entirely. But as you go through this, you can see that there is, like, of course, an image of the Liopleurodon right there. But there's also information on the species in general in here. So there's all kinds of really cool stuff that you can read, even like a little Q&A right there. So fun stuff to include these little booklets. But again, starting up here at the head sculpt of the Liopleurodon, it looks really, really appealing looking. Like, the actual texturing on this is insanely well done. Like, when you look around here at this, there is a lot of detail included in the sculpt of this Liopleurodon, but I love the way that that yellow and blue coloration plays off of each other on the body of this Liopleurodon, especially the way they've kind of outlined the eye there with like that yellowish coloration. It just looks super cool, and the eye paint is just applied perfectly on the figure. You can see it's also bordered with a nice black, but painted with a different version of like a greenish yellow, and then given a nice black pupil. It looks insanely appealing as far as the overall appearance of the head goes, and that eye just brings so much life to the figure. But you can also see that the actual texturing to the skin and everything of this Liopleurodon is nicely done. You have the nostrils sculpted out up there. The teeth are also really beautifully displayed in the sculpt as well, and they're very nice and very carefully painted. As we turn the figure, if I don't drop it, you can see that the teeth look great on each and every tooth that you see displayed on the mouth of the Liopleurodon. You can also see some nice detailing here to the inside of the mouth, as well as the entire inside of the mouth there. You can see that unfortunately the teeth aren't painted really on the inside, but I think that they look so nice from the outside, and you can't really get in the inside of the mouth too well that it really doesn't take away from the figure or anything. It still looks gorgeous. And the eye is painted beautifully over here on this side, just like we had seen on the previous side. And the texturing to the skin is just honestly jaw-dropping on this figure. It looks really, really good. Like, there's just a ton of detail to be found on this figure. And I love the way they've painted the bluish areas, because they have a really dark blue, but you can also see like some really nice dry brushing of a lighter blue, which just creeps up in certain areas, and it looks super appealing with the tones of color that they've chosen and how they play off of each other. It's just really nice, and you'll see that more as we continue to go along through the body, because it really shows up quite nicely here in the back. As you look down here into the lower jaw, you can see some more really nice texturing to the skin, and once you hit the underside of the Liopleurodon's lower jaw and the throat area, you can just see tons of skin wrinkles and movement shown within the sculpt of this Liopleurodon, as well as a beautiful yellowish coloration down here. They've also applied a nice wash to the figure, like a grayish wash to the underside, so the yellow has a very realistic appearance as far as a paint application standpoint goes, but just generally making sure that the detail pops beautifully and very realistically throughout the course of the figure. And the underside, I love how they've painted just a little, like, very subtle amount of that yellow out into the flippers of the Liopleurodon. It looks really, really cool. And then if we come back here to the top of the figure again, you can see that the actual skin texture and everything looks fantastic. You have some nice creases here in the neck region as you move back into the body of the Liopleurodon. You can see some more really nice kind of creasing and everything down here as you lead into the flipper. The flipper is gorgeously well done. Beautiful detailing out here, and again you have more of that yellow popping up as well as that beautiful light blue dry brushing, so it just looks very vibrant and quite flashy. Coming back up into the body, that really nice light blue dry brushing has really brought out every ounce of detail on this figure, and again, it just shows off how much work Recur had put into this Liopleurodon when sculpting it out. Like, it is just honestly mind-bogglingly nice. As you lead down here into the side, you can see a really smooth transition between that blue and then the yellow underbelly. You can also see some nice skin folds and skin wrinkles and stuff going on here and there. And again, that really nice, very cool looking curve to the body. You can see the rear flipper also looks quite nice, some more creasing there at the joint of the flipper, and then as you lead out here again, the skin texture looks really beautiful and is brought out again with that very nice light bluish coloration, and we have more flashiness with that yellow kind of striping out here on that flipper. As you lead back up into the body, you can see the tail looks great as we lead out to the length of the tail. We have a little bit of a yellow coloration out here at the tip of the Liopleurodon's tail as well. If we take a look at the opposing side, you can now see way more skin wrinkles and stuff going on here in the side of the neck because the Liopleurodon has its head turned in that direction, so you can definitely see some nice movement shown there in the neck region of the Liopleurodon. And then again, this side you have the flipper up much higher than what we had seen on the other side as the Liopleurodon is swimming along, and you can see that the Liopleurodon's flipper over here looks just as gorgeous as it did on the previous side, sporting again that really nice yellowish coloration that stripes in and just adds a nice bit of flashiness to the figure, but also that beautiful dry brushing, which I absolutely am a huge fan of. The dry brushing that they've applied, like, it just looks so cool. You can also see the spinal column of the Liopleurodon right there elaborated in the sculpt. Again, the nice bends and folds in the body are nicely displayed in the sculpt as far as like skin wrinkles and skin movement and stuff. You also have the nice flipper here in the back as we lead out the length of the tail again. You can see more of that flashy yellow right there. And the underside of the Liopleurodon is gorgeous from a detailing standpoint, but also from a paint standpoint. I love that light gray wash that they've applied. And just generally all of the detailing on the underside and the paintwork is just fantastic. So this might be my favorite Recur figure ever. It's really a hard choice to make, but this thing is just absolutely beautiful. Now, as far as a size goes on our Liopleurodon, for a length, you are looking at about 11 3/4 inches or 30 centimeters, so a very sizable figure as per usual when it comes to Recur. There's not much height-wise. Of course, being a marine reptile, you really won't find too much in the height department. But as far as this one goes to the top of the back, you're looking at about 2.5 inches or about 6.5 centimeters, somewhere in that vicinity. For a size comparison, here are our usual review comparison suspects with Mr. Papo-T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line in comparison to our Recur Liopleurodon, and you can see without question that this figure sports a very large and very impressive size, which is something that is a continuing trend when it comes to Recur. They always have that larger size to their figures, which makes them very impressive. And of course, the fact that they're made with a very soft and very durable material gives them, of course, if we move Muldoon out of the way, it gives them this really soft, squishy feel, which allows you to have a beautifully detailed figure. Like, you can bend them and everything, you can articulate them, all kinds of movement is possible when it comes to that soft, squishy feel, which is really good. Again, I've stated this in every review so far. If you are buying these for your kids, they're a great way to go because they could take such a beating and they are so durable. They don't really chip as far as being thrown around, and they're not going to break. So definitely a great choice as far as a figure goes if you are going to find something that you want to buy for your kids that's going to definitely last. The Recur figures are a great way to go. But You're also going to get a very sizable figure when you go that route when it comes to a Recur figure, and I'd like to think that this right here can show you that. And for one other comparison that I kind of wanted to bring into show with this one, we have the Toyway Liopleurodon from the Walking with Dinosaurs series, who is not exactly positioned very well in comparison to the Recur one. And you can definitely see how they are very similarly sculpted. Obviously, the tails are different. We have a very different looking tail on the Recur version than what we have on the Walking with Dinosaurs version. But I feel like the paint schemes are kind of similar, just different tones of color, and the sculpts are similar as well, but the Recur version definitely has a much larger size than the Toyway version. So this Recur Liopleurodon figure is a gorgeous looking figure, and definitely one of the most striking Recur figures that they have out, period, if you ask me. Like, I was so impressed with it when I had initially found it on Amazon. I was just instantly in love with it, and I've been kind of wanting it now probably for about a solid year since I found it, so I'm really happy to actually have it now here in hand and in my collection. And I can say with complete confidence that it has completely exceeded my expectations. Like, it's even better in hand than I expected it to be, and with the prototype images that I had seen on Amazon, I already had some pretty high expectations for the figure, but that definitely crushed those expectations, as it's just gorgeous here in hand. The sculpt is beautifully done, showing just unreasonable amounts of detail that I just can't even fathom how they found a way to include so much detail on this figure. It's really impressive from a detailing standpoint, just showing off how good Recur truly is when it comes to sculpting out fine detail on their figure. It's just beautiful in that aspect. And also the positioning of the body, the pose, I really love what they've done with this figure as far as, again, thinking outside the box, not just giving you that stagnant kind of laying there position that you often see portrayed in marine reptiles. They have gone the extra mile as far as creating something a little different, a little bit flashier, and definitely a little more appealing to the eye when it comes to the positioning of this body, but still maintaining the fact that it can stand nicely, it can display nicely, and it shows off the nice side of the figure. Like, sometimes if you kind of have like this kind of more dramatic pose for like a standalone figure, and then you'll try to sit it up, it'll fall over and stuff because there's no real good way to balance it out unless you have a stand. But Recur has pulled it off really nicely, where this figure can stand and balance, well, not really stand, but sit there and balance perfectly while showing off the really cool sculpt and positioning for the body, and just showing off how beautiful the figure is in general. So they really should be commended on doing a great job in the entire pose and displaying aspect of this figure. And the paint scheme is beautiful, definitely a really nicely done paint scheme on the figure, allowing a really nice natural look, but with a good bit of flashiness to the animal as well, which all at the same time looks like it could 100% be the coloration of a Liopleurodon, and looks really nice and natural on the figure overall. And all of the paint application as well is beautifully applied. I don't see any areas on this figure that honestly I could really complain about when it comes to paintwork. I feel like the entire thing is just beautifully done. The closest thing could be potentially the fact that there's missing paint on the inside of the teeth, but that's such a very minor thing on this figure considering you don't see in the mouth too much. So I'm really not upset about that, and that's kind of something that Recur always has done, so it's something that if you are familiar with the Recur series, you'll already be familiar with that aspect of their figures. But again, as a whole, I love this Liopleurodon. Definitely one of the, if not the nicest releases from Recur that I've seen in hand so far. So if you are interested in picking this up, make sure you check the link in the description, as I will include a link to where you can purchase this gorgeous figure. So make sure you check the link, go buy this fantastic Liopleurodon, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.